So, King of the Hill, 13 seasons, 259 episodes. A fictional suburb of Dallas that somehow feels more like a real place than most real places ever get to feel on television. Mike Judge and Greg Daniels made it in 1997, and it ran until 2010. And in that time, it quietly became one of the most honest things that animated television ever produced. The premise is not flashy. Hank Hill sells propane in Arlen, Texas. He has a wife named Peggy and a son named Bobby who confuses him on a daily basis. He drinks beer in his back alley with 3 friends he has known since childhood. Things happen, not enormous things, usually fairly small things, and those small things turn out to matter quite a lot. What I want to do tonight is go through King of the Hill the way you might go through a box of old photographs with someone who knew all the people in them. Slowly, with detours, noticing things you might have missed or half forgotten, because the show rewards that kind of attention. It was always doing more than it appeared to be doing, and looking at it properly, at the characters individually, at what the show was quietly arguing through them, feels worthwhile. We are going to cover a lot of ground tonight. Hank and his relationship with his work, and what the show thinks that says about dignity and craft. Bobby, his son, and what it looks like to be completely, stubbornly yourself in a family that has different expectations of you. The alley and the 4 men who stand in it every evening drinking Alamo beer and saying very little that sounds important but meaning quite a lot. Bill, who is one of the most careful portraits of loneliness I have seen on any television show. Cotton, Hank's father, and the question of what wounds get carried from one generation to the next without ever being named. Peggy and the complicated case for believing in yourself, sometimes incorrectly. Dale, who sees conspiracies everywhere except in his own back garden, which is the one place there was actually something going on. Con and the specific exhaustion of belonging somewhere that was not designed with you in mind. Luann and the question of who gets to start over. The town itself, Arlen, which is as much a character as anyone who lives in it. And the finale, which I'll say now is one of the best series endings I know of. No rush. We'll take it one thing at a time. A quick note before we begin, if this kind of video is something you like, a subscribe really does help and means I can keep doing this sort of thing, but honestly, no pressure. If you're just here to drift off to Arlen, that is exactly what this is for. Let's begin. The show is set in Arlen, Texas, which is based on Richardson, Texas, a suburb of Dallas where Mike Judge grew up. It has the specific texture of a place that actually exists. The heat is right, the flatness is right. The particular quality of a community where everyone knows their neighbor's lawnmower schedules, and which house has the German Shepherd, and roughly what everyone earns and whose marriage is going through a difficult patch, and which kid is struggling at school. That kind of knowing, the kind that builds up over years of living in close proximity to people and accumulates into something that functions when you need it to function as a community. The show loves Arlen. That's the thing. It's not satirizing it. It's not holding it at a distance and pointing out its limitations. It loves the place and the people in it. And that love is what makes the comedy and the pathos work simultaneously. You have to genuinely care about something for both of those to land at the same time. We'll get into all of it, starting with the man at the center of it. Hank Rutherford Hill is the kind of man who, if you asked him to define himself in a sentence, would probably say something like, "I'm Hank Hill. I sell propane and propane accessories. I live at 84 Rainy Street in Arlen, Texas, and I'd appreciate it if you didn't lean on the fence." He works at Strickland Propane, has done for his entire adult life. His boss is a man named Buck Strickland, who is charming and successful in a local legend kind of way, and also a fairly consistent source of trouble. Hank's title is assistant manager. He is unquestionably the most competent person at Strickland Propane, and probably one of the most competent people in Arlen at anything. He knows propane with a depth that goes well beyond what his job technically requires. And he cares about it, about propane, about the business, about the customers. in a way that most people reserve for things the world agrees are worth caring about. The show from the very first episode takes this completely seriously. This is the thing I want to start with because I think it's the foundation of everything else King of the Hill is doing. The show is not making a joke at Hank's expense when it shows him caring about propane. It's not using his passion as shorthand for small-mindedness or limited horizons, or a man who didn't reach for something bigger. It is making the genuine argument that caring deeply about your work, whatever that work is a form of character. And Hank demonstrates this in almost every episode across 13 seasons. There are a few specific things about how Hank approaches his job that the show keeps coming back to. One is competence. Hank knows what he's selling. If a customer needs a particular tank for a particular application, Hank knows which one it is, and he will not sell them something else, even if something else is more expensive and would therefore benefit him financially. This is not a policy he's been trained to follow. It's just how he thinks. He is at Strickland Propane to help people meet a genuine need correctly, and meeting it incorrectly would be, to use Hank's preferred mode of disapproval, wrong. Another is honesty. He won't shade the truth to close a sale, won't exaggerate a product's performance, won't tell a customer something is fine when it isn't. There are multiple situations across the series where Buck Strickland, chasing a sale or trying to manage a problem he's created, essentially needs Hank to be less than fully truthful on behalf of the business. Hank tries not to be less than fully truthful. He'll find another way to handle it. He'll be awkward and sometimes painfully direct about it, but he usually won't lie. And then there's loyalty, which is the one that I think is hardest to simply explain without making it sound like a character flaw, which the show is careful to show it isn't. Hank is loyal to Strickland Propane in a way that occasionally strains credulity, given what Buck puts him through. The gambling problem, the various affairs, the general cloud of Buck-shaped chaos that drifts through the business periodically and then settles on Hank to be sorted out. And Hank sorts it out, not because he has no other options, and not because he lacks the self-awareness to understand what he's absorbing. He does it because Strickland Propane is where he works, these are his people, and you don't abandon the things you've committed to. That's just how it is for him. There's an episode arc running across the end of Season 2 and into Season 3 that's worth dwelling on here. The propane explosion, something goes wrong at the Megalo Mart, there's an explosion, significant damage, and extended fallout. The plot mechanics are less important than what the episode arc reveals about Hank's relationship to his workplace. He doesn't react to the damage at Strickland Propane the way you'd react to a setback at a job you just work at. He reacts the way you'd react to something happening to a place you belong to, something that's bound up with your sense of who you are. The grief in it is quiet, which is very Hank, but it's real. I find this genuinely moving, if I'm honest. There's something most of us recognize about having a place or a role that feels like yours, that you've built a version of yourself around, and having something threaten that. The scale doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be an impressive career or a significant title. It can be a propane dealership in suburban Texas, and it can still mean everything. Now, Buck Strickland functions in the show as a kind of shadow Hank, and it's worth spending a moment on him for that reason. Buck has some of what you might assume would come with conventional success, money, local status, a certain confidence in social situations. He's a man who knows how to walk into a room and work it, but he has almost none of what Hank has, which is an internal standard. Buck's decisions are governed largely by what he wants in the moment. The gambling, the affairs, the avoided conversations that become Hank's problems, all of it traces back to someone who hasn't developed an internal governor. The show never really condemns Buck. He has his own decency in spots, and Hank's affection for him is not presented as misplaced, but the contrast is deliberate. Buck's way of moving through the world, charm without integrity, achievement without character, leaves him in a more fragile position than Hank's. Hank's life is quieter and financially less spectacular, but it has a foundation. He can look at himself and know he did the work correctly and didn't cut corners. The show thinks that's worth quite a lot. There's something interesting about the cultural moment King of the Hill was made in, and what it was pushing back against, even if it never announced that it was pushing back against anything. The show ran from 1997 to 2010, which is roughly the period when the dominant stories in popular culture about what success and a good life look like were increasingly stories about disruption, reinvention, scaling, changing the world. The startup mythology, the celebrity career arc, the idea that greatness meant doing something new and audacious and large. Hank Hill does none of these things. He is not disrupting anything. He is not reinventing himself. He has not and will not pivot. He sells propane in one Texas town to people who need it, the same way he has done for decades, and he will probably keep doing this until he retires. And King of the Hill's position on this is, so what? That is a life, a good one. The community of Arlen functions partly because people like Hank show up every day and do their work carefully and honestly. That's the fabric of things. It's not glamorous and it doesn't get written up anywhere, but it's what makes communities actual communities rather than just collections of houses. This is a genuinely radical argument for a television show to be making, and the remarkable thing is that it makes it without ever announcing that it's making it. It just shows you Hank, caring about propane, being honest with customers, cleaning up after Buck's disasters without complaint, trusting that doing things correctly is its own justification. I want to be careful not to make Hank sound too perfect, because he isn't. His commitment to doing things the right way tips regularly into rigidity, and the rigidity causes him real problems. He has a very specific picture of what things should look like, not just at work, but at home, in his marriage with Bobby. And when reality doesn't match the picture, he struggles. He doesn't always have good tools for that. He has a code that serves him beautifully in most professional situations and sometimes fails him in personal ones, where codes are insufficient and what's needed is flexibility or vulnerability or just asking a question without already knowing the answer you think you should be getting. There's a reason for this, and it has to do with his father, which we'll get into properly later in the video. The short version is that Hank grew up with a man who was impossible to please and who communicated primarily through contempt. So Hank built a self that didn't require approval from outside. His standard is internal. He knows when he's done something right because he simply knows, not because anyone confirms it for him. That's a significant psychological achievement, actually, even if Hank would be baffled by that framing. And it runs through everything: how he sells propane, how he fixes things in the house, how he tends the yard, how he treats his neighbors. The work isn't separate from the man. The work is an expression of the man. And for 13 seasons, the show takes that expression seriously. Here's something small that I think illustrates all of this neatly. In the very last episode of the series, there's a moment where the closing image is Hank standing at his grill. Not at Strickland Propane, not doing something significant, just at his grill with his family and friends around him grilling something. And it lands with enormous emotional weight because you've watched this man for 13 years and you understand that this moment, the grill, the propane, the neighborhood, is everything he was trying to build. That's his version of having made it. And the show says, yes, that counts. That more than counts. But we'll get to the ending properly later. Right now, let's talk about the person who confused Hank most and who the show ultimately argues is one of his greatest achievements. There's a specific episode I find myself thinking about in relation to Hank's work ethic, which is Hank's backstory in season 5. Hank discovers he has a condition the show calls diminished gluteal syndrome. His gluteal muscles have atrophied significantly, which has been causing his back problems. The treatment involves a prosthetic backside, a fake bottom, which Hank has to wear. The comedy in this episode is obvious, but the thing the episode is really doing is putting Hank in a situation where his physical self, the body he has always occupied with such certainty, the body that does the work, lifts the things, stands in the alley, that body has a gap in it that requires a prosthesis. And Hank's response to this vulnerability is to be mortified, to try to hide it, and then gradually, with Peggy's help, to accept it. What the episode demonstrates is that Hank's code, his self-reliance, his maintenance of standards, his refusal to show weakness, isn't purely rigidity. It bends when it has to. He wears the prosthetic. He goes to the support group. He does the embarrassing thing because the embarrassing thing is the right thing. The integrity extends even to situations where the integrity costs him something. This is actually a more nuanced portrait of character than it first appears. Hank is not a man who refuses to adapt. He's a man who adapts only when the adaptation is genuinely necessary, when it serves a real purpose, rather than simply making his life more convenient. He won't shade the truth to close a sale, but he'll wear a prosthetic bottom if the prosthetic bottom is what his back needs. There's also something about the way Hank talks about propane that reveals his character in small ways consistently throughout the series. He doesn't use hyperbole, he doesn't oversell. When he talks about what propane can do, he talks about what propane can actually do, what BTU output you need for a certain grill, why a particular tank is the right size for a particular application, what the actual difference is between propane and charcoal in terms of heat consistency. The knowledge is real, and the presentation of it is accurate. He's not a salesman in the pejorative sense. He's someone who genuinely knows his product and genuinely believes in it and tells the truth about it. The show uses this to contrast with people who are more comfortable with embellishment. Buck Strickland is happy to promise things he's not certain of. Various competitors to Strickland Propane appear across the series who use misleading tactics, make promises they can't keep. Hank finds this genuinely offensive, not strategically offensive, not in the way someone objects to a competitor's tactics. Genuinely morally offensive. You don't mislead people who are trying to meet a genuine need. That's just not something you do. I've been wondering, watching the show across multiple viewings, whether there's something the show is saying about authenticity through Hank's relationship to his work. There's a version of Hank's character that reads as just stubborn and conservative. The man who won't change, who resists anything new, who holds his particular corner of the world together through sheer refusal to adapt. But I think that's not quite right. What Hank is actually doing is something more specific. He is maintaining fidelity to things that have real value, quality of work, honesty with people, commitment to what you've taken on, and resisting things that would undermine those. The resistance isn't blanket conservatism, it's discrimination. He knows the difference between a tradition that deserves to be kept because it works and a habit that's just inertia. He's better at the former than the latter, which is where some of his limitations live. But the core instinct is sound, and that instinct, that knowledge of what is worth keeping and why, is what makes Hank Hill worth spending 13 seasons with. Robert Jeffrey. Bobby Hill is 13 years old for 13 seasons of television, and he is one of the most fully realized characters in the show, which is saying something given the company he's in. Here is what Bobby is. He is round and cheerful and funny and gentle. He loves food. He loves making people laugh. He is interested in people in a warm, genuine way that isn't performance. He does not particularly like football. He does not have a natural aptitude for the outdoors or for mechanical things or for the particular version of masculinity that Arlen, Texas, tends to hold up. He is not embarrassed by any of this. He is, in the very best sense of the phrase, completely himself. And Hank, who loves Bobby absolutely, has absolutely no idea what to do with him. This tension between a father who has a very specific picture of what a son is supposed to be and a son who is cheerfully, stubbornly something else is the spine of the entire show. 13 seasons, and it never gets old because the show is smart enough to never turn either of them into the wrong party. Hank is not a bad father. Bobby is not a difficult child. They are just two people who genuinely love each other and can't quite find the shared language for it. Bobby's comedy is worth taking seriously for a moment because the show does. He is actually funny, not in a precocious child sitcom way where the audience laughs because a small person said something adult. He has good timing, he has an instinct for absurdity. He makes observations that are genuinely unexpected and often spot on. In one early episode, he does a dead-on impression of Hank to Hank's face, and the impression is accurate enough to momentarily silence the room. Hank's reaction is to be deeply uncomfortable. Bobby's reaction is to be pleased. He was just doing a bit. He doesn't fully understand yet that the bit landed differently than he intended. He treats comedy as something worth working at. He watches stand-up. He thinks about jokes. He cares about timing in the way that Hank cares about propane tank specifications. And the show honors this. It doesn't reduce Bobby's interest in comedy to a quirk or a phase or an immature distraction from more serious pursuits. It's his thing. He's good at it. That counts. There's a particular episode, Pete, Bobby Goes Nuts, in the 6th season that I think is one of the purest Bobby episodes in the whole run. A brief summary. Bobby's being bullied, and instead of the usual route of learning to fight, he signs up for a women's self-defense class. He learns one specific technique, a groin kick, and discovers that it is devastatingly effective on practically everyone. He begins applying it indiscriminately. To bullies, yes, but also to Dale, to Boomhauer, eventually to Hank. Hank is horrified. He tries to address it as a matter of masculine dignity. Bobby simply continues because the technique works and Bobby is nothing if not pragmatic. And the show is, throughout this, completely on Bobby's side. Not in a way that makes Hank villainous, but in a way that keeps noticing that Bobby has found a solution to his problem and is applying it with great confidence. He's not being malicious, he's being effective. These are sometimes the same thing, and Hank has to work out how to feel about that. What I love about this episode, and about Bobby in general, is that the show never asks him to be smaller than he is. It doesn't apologize for him. It doesn't position him as a problem to be solved or a gap to be filled. He is who he is, and that's consistently presented as fine, more than fine actually, as something real and particular and worth knowing. Bobby's relationship to food is another thing the show develops across multiple seasons with more care than it probably needed to. He's not just a kid who eats a lot, which would be the easy version. He notices things. He has genuine opinions about flavor. He remembers meals. He picks up on the quality of what he's eating in a way that other people around him don't. This gets paid off in the finale, and we'll get to that, but for now, it's there from early on. This capacity to really taste things and care about the difference between them. The Hank and Bobby relationship evolves slowly over the course of the show. And the slow pace of it is one of the things that makes the eventual payoff feel earned. There are episodes where Hank tries to teach Bobby something he cares about, and it goes sideways. There are episodes where Bobby discovers something about himself that Hank can't quite share. There are quiet moments where it's clear that Hank sees Bobby and loves what he sees, even when he can't articulate what he's seeing because it doesn't map onto any picture of a son that he came with. There's a quality Hank has that I find genuinely interesting across these episodes. He keeps trying. He fails at connecting with Bobby in one area and then turns up in another area and tries again. He doesn't give up on finding the shared ground. He doesn't write Bobby off as incomprehensible. He keeps showing up and looking. This is, the show suggests, most of what love actually looks like in practice. Not the grand gesture, but the ongoing attempt, even when the attempt is clumsy. Bobby, for his part, wants Hank's approval. This comes through quite clearly. He's not running from Hank or indifferent to what Hank thinks. He wants his dad to think well of him. He just doesn't want to become someone else to get it, and the show is completely clear that he shouldn't have to. One of the things the show does beautifully is show Bobby's social intelligence. He is, in his way, much better at reading people than Hank is. He can walk into a social situation and navigate it comfortably in ways that Hank finds genuinely baffling. He makes friends easily. He makes adults feel comfortable. He is warm in a way that isn't strategic. It just comes naturally, this interest in other people and willingness to meet them where they are. This is undervalued in Arlen. The things Bobby is good at, warmth, observation, comedy, food, people, don't fit the Arlen hierarchy of skills. Football matters in Arlen. Mechanical competence matters. Hunting, fishing, grilling correctly, knowing the right way to handle a truck. Bobby isn't deficient in these areas so much as uninterested, and in Arlen, the distinction between deficiency and disinterest can be difficult to perceive. But watching the show from the outside, you see it clearly. Bobby Hill is going to be fine. He has real intelligence, real warmth, real talent, a strong sense of himself, and he moves through the world without cruelty. That's most of what you need. The show knows this. It lets you know it knows it. The patience the series has with Hank and Bobby's relationship is one of the things that distinguishes King of the Hill from almost every other family animated show I can think of. Most shows of this type resolve the parent-child tension by one party learning and changing, usually by the episode's end. King of the Hill mostly doesn't do this. The tension continues. Hank keeps not quite getting it. Bobby keeps being Bobby. And season after season, very slowly, almost imperceptibly, something does shift. Not because one of them was wrong and came around, but because 13 years of love and proximity and showing up does something that neither could have predicted. We'll see exactly what it does when we get to the finale. For now, just hold on to the image of Bobby Hill, round and pleased with himself, genuinely content in his own skin, standing in the Hill kitchen eating something he's curious about. That's the image. That's who he is. And it's enough. Now, talking a bit about the people who surround Hank and Bobby, and specifically about the place where much of the show's real emotional life gets processed, without anyone ever quite naming it as such. There's an episode called Aisle 8A in Season 4 that I think is one of the best Bobby episodes in the entire run, and it doesn't get talked about as much as it should. Hank accidentally ends up responsible for helping a girl, Connie, the Supanusin phone daughter from next door, navigate getting her period for the first time after it starts during a sleepover at the Hills house, and he later takes her to the Megalo Mart. He deals with it. Practically, he figures out what's needed, he goes and gets it, and he is kind about it in a way that is completely natural to him and would be excruciating to someone with less genuine warmth. The episode is funny partly because it's a situation most 13-year-old boys would handle very poorly, and Bobby handles it very well. But it's also funny because of Hank's reaction when he finds out, which is a masterpiece of Hank Hill facial expression. The horror of the specific information colliding with the pride that Bobby did something right, colliding with the discomfort of not having the vocabulary for this particular situation. Hank ends up in a conversation with Bobby about what happened, and it's one of the more tender moments the show finds between them, not because anything emotionally explicit is said, but because Hank, in his way, acknowledges that Bobby did the right thing. Bobby's emotional intelligence, his ability to be present with people in ways that don't require him to have all the answers, is one of the things the show does quietly and consistently. He's not just funny, he's perceptive. He notices when people are uncomfortable and he tries to make them more comfortable, usually without making a performance of doing so. This is a real skill, and it's a rare one, and the show gives it to Bobby from the beginning without ever making it the subject of explicit praise. The relationship between Bobby and Connie is another thread worth noting here, because it's one of the show's sweeter undercurrents across multiple seasons. They are at various points friends, then something more than friends, then navigating the aftermath of that. The show treats their connection with the same unflashy care it gives everything else. It's not played as a grand romance. It's not played for comedy at their expense. It's just two young people who genuinely like each other and are figuring out what that means. I want to say something about patience in relation to Bobby's story because I think it's the underrated virtue the show is most interested in. Hank could have pushed Bobby toward the version of himself Hank wanted more forcefully. He could have enrolled him in more activities, insisted more loudly, made the expectations clearer. He doesn't. He pushes, yes, there are episodes where he pushes quite hard, but then he backs off. He waits. He keeps showing up without forcing it. And Bobby could have contorted himself to give Hank what Hank was looking for. He could have taken up hunting with more commitment, or learned to care about football in the way Hank cares about it, or performed enthusiasm for the things Hank values. He doesn't do this either. He's too honest. He's too comfortable in his own skin. He'll try things. He'll give them genuine effort. But he doesn't pretend to love something he doesn't love, and he doesn't become someone else to make his father happy. This mutual patience, both of them waiting for the right thing to arrive without forcing it, is what makes the finale's resolution feel earned rather than convenient. They didn't manufacture the connection, they waited for it. And in the final episode, it was there. 13 years is a long time to wait for a shared language. But that's the honest version of how these things sometimes work. There is a strip of asphalt behind Hank Hill's house that the show returns to more than any other location. More than Strickland Propane, more than Tom Landry Middle School, more than the interior of the Hill house itself in some ways. It's an alley, concrete and fence posts, a stretch of space between the back of the houses on Rainy Street and the houses on the street behind them. Nothing remarkable about it. 4 men stand there, most evenings, usually with cans of Alamo beer. They stand facing the fence, which has always struck me as a specifically true detail, not facing each other, but sort of adjacent to each other, all looking in roughly the same direction, which happens to be at the fence. And they talk. What they talk about varies. Lawnmowers quite frequently, local events, sports, something odd that happened at the petrol station, something odd that one of their neighbors did, Buck Strickland's latest piece of chaos, whatever Bobby is up to, whatever Dale has recently become convinced the government is doing. The kinds of topics that have, on the surface, very little weight. The kinds of conversations that would look, if you were watching from outside, like not much. And that is precisely the point. The 4 of them are Hank, Dale Gribble, Bill Dauterive, and Jeff Boomhauer. They have been friends since childhood. They are not especially alike. Dale is a conspiracy theorist and exterminator. Bill is a barber at an army base who has been in a low-grade depression since his wife left him years ago. Boomhauer speaks in a rapid, overlapping mumble that can be hard to understand for anyone who hasn't known him for years. They irritate each other regularly. They disagree about things. They sometimes do quite stupid things together. They are there most evenings. That last sentence is the important one. What King of the Hill is capturing in the alley scenes, and what I think often gets overlooked in discussions of the show, is one of the more honest portrayals of how many people actually experience friendship, particularly men of a certain generation and disposition, though not exclusively. The friendship is not primarily articulated. It is not processed in explicit emotional terms. Nobody in that alley is saying, I want to talk about how I'm feeling about our friendship, or I've been struggling lately and I wanted to share that with you. What they do is show up every evening and stand there together and talk about the lawnmower. And somehow, through the showing up and the lawnmower and the Alamo beer and the fence, something real is being transmitted. Support, presence, the knowledge that you're not alone in your particular Tuesday evening. These things get communicated sideways through the texture of proximity, not through direct declaration. There are moments in the show where something actually heavy comes up, something going wrong with Bill, or a difficulty Hank is navigating, or even Dale in one of his more genuinely unsettling moments. And the alley is where it surfaces, not because someone brought it there deliberately, but because these are the people they stand with in the evenings, and if you stand with someone every evening for long enough, the real things start to come out eventually, even if they come out in sideways language and get met with sideways responses. Boomhauer is worth focusing on for a moment here. He is the most mysterious of the 4 across the original run of the show. His speech is delivered in a fast, overlapping drawl that overlaps itself so thoroughly that first-time viewers basically cannot understand him. Arlen residents who aren't his close friends react to him with confusion. His closest friends hear him perfectly. They've been hearing him for decades. They know what he means. There's something genuinely lovely about that as a portrait of intimacy. Not romantic intimacy, just the intimacy of people who have known each other long enough that they've learned each other's particular language. Boomhauer's friends don't need him to translate himself. They already speak Boomhauer, and he speaks them. This is what decades of friendship actually produces, and the show captures it with this lovely, slightly absurd detail. There's also the question of what Boomhauer is actually doing in the world, which the show keeps as a deliberate mystery until the final episode of its 13th season. He has a comfortable house. He seems to have money. He is, by any observable measure, fairly together, despite the speech, despite the mysterious schedule, despite the general air of someone who is living according to a set of rules that he hasn't shared with anyone. What those rules are and what he actually does, the show doesn't tell you until the very last episode. We'll get to that. Bill's presence in the alley is its own chapter, which we'll go into properly in the next section. But the short version, relevant here, is that the alley is one of the things that keeps Bill functional. Not because his friends are exceptional at supporting him, they're not always. Hank especially sometimes handles Bill's pain with a rigidity that doesn't help, but because he knows where to go. He knows there are people who will stand with him in an alley on a Tuesday evening whether he is doing well or doing badly. The bar is low and it is also load-bearing. I want to say something about showing up because I think it's central to what the alley sequences are actually about. One of the things people often say they need when they're going through something difficult is someone to talk to. And that's true as far as it goes, but there's something slightly prior to talking, which is the knowledge that someone is there. The knowledge that if you stood in a particular alley on a Tuesday evening, there would be people in it. You don't have to talk, you might not. The lawnmower conversation is fine, the fence is fine, just somebody else is here. That, all by itself, is not nothing. The show thinks it might be quite a lot, actually. The alley scenes are also the show's primary space for a kind of dry, understated comedy that depends entirely on how well you know these characters. A Dale theory that has evolved between episodes. Boomhauer saying something completely intelligible to the other three. Hank's dawning realization that something slightly irregular is happening. Bill being more depressed than usual in a way that the others acknowledge obliquely and then move past. These interactions are funny in a way that requires you to have been watching for a while. The show doesn't explain them. It trusts you to have been paying attention. And in the very last shot of the very last episode, the show brings everyone back to this alley. After everything, after the finale's events, which we'll talk about later, the final image of the series involves these people, in this place, at the end of an evening. The camera pulls up and Arlen is visible and the alley is visible within it. It's just an alley with some people in it. And it means everything, and one of those people has been standing in the alley every evening for decades, in more need of it than anyone. Something I haven't said yet about the alley that I think matters. It's not a special place. It is specifically not a special place. It's an alley, behind houses, with a fence. The ground is concrete or packed dirt depending on the shot. There are occasionally bins. It is the most ordinary setting imaginable, and that ordinariness is the point. In a different show, the friendship between four men would get a more decorated space. A bar with personality, or a garage that's clearly a sanctuary, or some setting that signals to the audience that something meaningful happens here. King of the Hill gives you an alley, and then it makes you understand, across 13 seasons, that the alley is the most important place in the show. This is the show's argument about friendship made spatial. The friendship isn't special. These men aren't doing anything remarkable. They're just there, in the least remarkable place, repeatedly. And that repetition, that showing up in the unremarkable place, is what makes it mean something. Dale in the alley is often at his funniest. His conspiracies unspool naturally in this context, where the other three have learned to engage with them in a particular way, nodding along with the parts that aren't entirely insane, gently pivoting when something crosses a line into territory that requires a response. Mostly just letting Dale talk because this is what Dale does, and Dale is their friend, and they've been letting Dale talk for 40 years. There's a deep familiarity in it. Not indulgence exactly, just the knowledge that you can know someone's specific brand of nonsense so well that it stops being nonsense and starts being just how they are. Boomhauer in the Alley is the show's most sustained exercise in trust, because what Boomhauer does in the alley is talk. He contributes, he has opinions about things, he reacts to what the others say. The audience can't understand him, but his friends can, and watching the others respond to what he said as if it made complete sense, which to them it does, creates this beautiful feeling of being slightly outside a circle that is very firmly a circle. You can see that something real is being communicated. You just aren't in on the specific language of it. Boomhauer's speech thing is never explained. The show has an opportunity in multiple episodes to address it, to have someone ask, or to have it be the subject of an episode, and it consistently declines. It's just how Boomhauer is. His friends know what he means. That's sufficient. If anything, the unexplained quality of it adds to the show's portrait of long friendship. After enough years, you don't need everything explained. You already know. There's a texture to how Bill exists in the alley that's different from how he exists elsewhere. Outside the alley, Bill is often visibly struggling. There are social situations where his loneliness is on the surface, where his sadness is apparent, and sometimes inappropriate to the context. In the alley, he's calmer. He's among people who have known him at every stage of his life, who knew him when he was the football star and who were there when things fell apart, and who have been watching him cycle through hope and disappointment for years, without any of it meaningfully changing their willingness to stand with him in the evening. There's no solution happening in the alley. Bill is not getting better because of it, or not only because of it, or not faster than he would otherwise. But he keeps going. He shows up to the alley, and it's full of people who know him, and that's a day, that's a Tuesday, and then there's Wednesday, and the alley will be there again. The show's entire argument about what community and friendship actually consist of is visible in the alley scenes if you know what you're looking at. It's not the dramatic gesture, it's not the intervention or the heart-to-heart conversation or the moment of transformation. It's the fence and the beer and the evening and the four of them standing there being alive in each other's company. That's it. That's the whole thing. And the show makes you understand, scene by scene over 13 years, that this is enormous. His full name is Sergeant William Fontaine de la Tour d'Autrève. This detail is funnier the more you sit with it. William Fontaine de la Tour. It suggests a family line with some pretension to it, something old and possibly distinguished. Some gulf between the name and the man standing in the alley in an untucked shirt drinking a can of Alamo beer and looking sad about Tuesday. Bill was, by most accounts, a different person before Lenore left. He was a high school football star, apparently quite good. He served in the military, he married, he had a house on Rainy Street and neighbors and a wife, and a life that looked from the outside like it was going to continue in a reasonably stable direction. And then Lenore left, and the life went sideways, and the man in the alley is the result. The thing about Bill that I think often gets overlooked when people describe King of the Hill is that his pain is never the joke. He is sometimes the punchline of a situation. His circumstances are sometimes comedic in the dark, wry way that King of the Hill goes for. But the show is consistently clear that something real is happening with Bill, and that it takes it seriously. He works as a barber on an army base. He shaves heads mostly. This is the professional life that the former football star and military man has arrived at, and the show uses it without belaboring the irony. He's good at his job. He's also clearly not where he expected to be. Lenore has become something like a ghost in his life. She has left, but she hasn't left in any functional sense. Bill names his pets after her. He refers to her constantly. He has built an entire, ongoing internal relationship with her absence. She's more present in his life in some ways than people who are actually there. Her departure has become the organizing fact of his existence. Not something that happened to him once, but something that is continuously happening, that he keeps inside a story he runs about himself that goes, Lenore left and so my life ended. The show returns to Bill's situation many times across the run, and the handling is usually careful. His friends know he's struggling. They don't always know what to do with that, and Hank especially sometimes handles it with a rigidity that doesn't help. Hank's instinct in the face of Bill's pain is often to tell him to get over it, to move on, to be a man about it, which is the worst possible advice, and the show knows it. But they're there. They keep turning up to the alley. They let him be in the vicinity of people who care about him, which is less than what he needs and more than nothing. The episode that most fully captures what the show is doing with Bill is Pretty, Pretty Dresses in Season 3. It airs around Christmas, which is the right time for it. Christmas has a specific cruelty for people who are lonely. The cultural insistence on warmth and family and togetherness. That makes the gaps in a person's life more visible by contrast. Bill has become, in this episode, very depressed. Suicidal, the episode is fairly clear, in the way that a show made in 1998 for a mainstream network is willing to be clear about this. There are multiple moments where his friends are actively preventing him from hurting himself, taking turns watching him, treating it with genuine alarm rather than as a comedic B-plot. He attempts various things, his friends keep him from them. It is both funny and genuinely unsettling, which is the particular King of the Hill achievement. Then Bill starts wearing Lenore's clothes. He goes by her name. He comes to the Hill's Christmas party dressed as her and answers to Lenore and speaks in her voice. The other guests don't quite know what to do with this. Hank, understanding that something has to be done, makes the decision to pretend to be Lenore. He goes to Bill in person, in character, and conducts the conversation that Lenore apparently never had with Bill, the one where she actually explains directly that she left because she never loved him, and it's as simple as that. And Bill, as Hank speaking as Lenore, confronts him with it. The anger that comes out is real. The pain that comes out is real. He yells at Lenore, at Hank, about not getting a proper goodbye, about the absence of a Dear John letter, about how he considers that rude, not I'm destroyed, not I can't survive this. I consider that rude, which is the most Bill thing imaginable and also somehow the most heartbreaking. After the call, Bill comes back to himself somewhat. He looks at Hank and says, I hit rock bottom there, didn't I? And Hank says, and hard. And that exchange, delivered completely matter-of-factly by both of them, is one of the most quietly real pieces of dialogue in the whole show. What makes this episode land is the combination of things it's doing simultaneously. It's funny in the dark way the show operates. It's genuinely sad. It treats Bill's pain as real while not allowing it to consume the entire episode's emotional register. And it shows his friends, specifically Hank, doing something imperfect and slightly absurd that nonetheless matters. Hank pretends to be Lenore not because it's a good plan, but because it's what he has. And he's trying, and Bill needs something. He shows up and does the strange thing because it's what the situation seems to require. The episode ends not with Bill being fixed, which would be dishonest, but with him having slightly more solid ground to stand on. He acknowledges that he hit rock bottom. That's something. The grief is still there. Lenore is still gone. Tuesday is still Tuesday. But he's slightly more present in it. The cycles continue across the series. Bill improves, Bill deteriorates. He dates various people, the show sends various women through his life, some with potential, none that stick. He has flashes of the person he used to be. He falls back. The revival, which is currently in development, will apparently show him still struggling, still working on it, still not quite where he hoped to be. Which is honest. These things don't resolve on a schedule. What the show says through Bill, I think, is something about the cruelty of long loneliness, the way it compounds on itself, the way it can turn from an event that happened to a story you live inside, the way the people around you can care about you and still not know what to actually do. And it says something else, something the alley scenes make clear across the whole series, which is that even imperfect care matters. Hank's somewhat rigid showing up, the Tuesday evenings, the fence, and the beer. It's not enough. It's not what Bill needs. But it keeps him going, and going is not nothing. One small thing I want to note. The revival apparently found Bill in a harder place than anyone expected. He's been managing something significant, quietly, for a long time, and there's something in that which feels very true to the character. Bill has been managing quietly for a very long time. The show was always showing you something real there, even when it was also being funny about it. Now, since we're talking about the men on Rainy Street and what formed them, let's talk about the man who formed Hank. Bill's life before Lenore left is worth dwelling on for a moment because the show uses it deliberately as a contrast. He was a high school football star, genuinely talented by the accounts the show provides. He had the kind of trajectory that small Texas towns produce sometimes. The athletic kid whose ability gives him a clear path through his early years, a defined identity, a social position. He was somebody in the Arlen sense of somebody. The military career followed. He became a barber on an army base, which is not exactly what you draw on a career trajectory map for someone who was a high school star, but which the show treats with the same matter-of-fact respect it gives Hank's propane work. He shaves heads, he's good at it, he shows up for it. The distance between who he was expected to become and who he became is real, but the show doesn't ask you to see his actual life as a failure. It asks you to understand that he sees it that way and that the self-perception is doing a lot of the damage. There are episodes across the series where Bill finds something, a new interest, a new relationship, a project that seems to be working, and the show lets you feel the genuine possibility in it. Bill responding to positive things is a version of Bill that's compelling to watch. He's warm. He has more charisma than his ongoing sadness tends to demonstrate. In these windows of hope, you can see the man he might have been or might still be if something would just hold. And then it doesn't hold. Something happens, the relationship ends, the project falls through, hope collapses back into the familiar groove of despair, and Bill retreats. The show's handling of these cycles is honest rather than cruel. It doesn't take pleasure in Bill's disappointments. It just records them with the same flatness it records everything and moves on. And then the next episode, there's Bill in the alley again, still there. Still drinking the beer, still a person. The friends don't always handle this well. Hank, in particular, operates from a framework that says you deal with difficulty by being stronger than it. You don't wallow, you don't give it more power by continuing to dwell on it. You pull yourself together and get on with things. This is not wrong exactly as frameworks go, but it's insufficient for what Bill is dealing with. You need to get over Lenore is technically true advice and functionally useless. Hank delivers versions of this advice and it has no effect, and then Hank delivers a similar version again later. He means well, he just doesn't have better tools. Dale's approach to Bill is different. Dale has a tendency to take Bill's side in things, to agree with Bill's most uncharitable interpretations of whatever situation he's in, to validate him in ways that aren't quite therapeutic. This also doesn't help for different reasons. Boomhauer, in those rare moments when the show lets him respond to something real, tends to say something his friends understand and the audience doesn't, and the other three nod and something seems to have been communicated. I've always found this oddly moving. Whatever Boomhauer says to Bill in the alley, his friends receive it as sufficient, and Bill receives it as something, and then they all drink their beer. That counts. What King of the Hill knows about supporting someone in long-term pain and what it demonstrates across Bill's storyline is that there is no solution available to the friends on the outside of that pain. They can't fix it. They can't love him out of it. They can't say the right thing at the right moment and have it change the underlying reality. All they can do is keep showing up, which they do imperfectly every evening in the alley. And the show argues quietly that this is not nothing. That being the person who is there even when you don't know what to say, even when you're saying the slightly wrong thing, is itself a form of care that matters. Bill is still there, in the alley, at the end of the series. That's the ending the show gives him. Not healed, still there. And still there is more than enough to keep going. Cotton Lindell Hill is, on the surface, a particular type. the impossible father. The World War II veteran who came back from the Pacific changed in ways he never had words for, and became, in the absence of those words, someone who expressed almost everything through contempt. Hank knows this type because he was raised by this type, and the show knows this type because it is, in some form, one of the most common types there is. Here's what we know about Cotton's service. He fought in the Pacific Theater in World War II, specifically in some of the bloodiest engagements of that campaign. His uniform is decorated with a silver star and a Purple Heart, which are not decorations given for anything close to comfortable service. He claims to have killed 50 men, which is 50, and the accuracy of that specific number is dubious. Cotton's war stories are inconsistent in ways the show gently notes, but his participation in genuine, horrifying combat is confirmed by the show's canon. The Pacific Theater was not a comfortable posting. It was brutal in ways that are difficult to convey. There's also the business with his shins. He lost them. They were cut off by a Japanese soldier during his service, and he, according to the family legend, walked on his knees to safety and survived. This is why Cotton is a short man, a distinctive silhouette, someone who carries the physical evidence of what happened to him visibly wherever he goes. The show doesn't ask you to dismiss Cotton's suffering. It takes it seriously. The war was real. The damage was real. The thing that happened to him before he was 25 was enormous. What the show examines is what Cotton did with that damage, which is, he turned it into a personality. He found an armor in contempt and dismissal and impossible standards, and a carefully maintained inability to acknowledge anything good or loving in another person. And then he aimed that armor primarily at his son. The ways Cotton was a bad father to Hank are numerous and consistent across the series. He is contemptuous of Hank's work, of Hank's marriage, of Hank's parenting choices, of Hank's fundamental character. He has, across the series, called Hank stupid, weak, inadequate in various specific ways. He never acknowledges what Hank has actually achieved or built. He treats the very existence of Hank's contentment as something slightly embarrassing, as if a happy life in Arlen is a failure of ambition rather than a genuine success. Hank takes this, he keeps taking it episode after episode, season after season. Not because he lacks self-awareness, not because he doesn't know on some level that Cotton is wrong, but because he is still trying. He is still, at some layer beneath the resignation, hoping for something from his father. That's what sons do. Even when the evidence is overwhelming that the thing isn't coming, they keep trying to find some angle from which it might arrive. This is one of the more painful pieces of human psychology, and King of the Hill depicts it with real care. There's a strange thing the show does with Cotton and Bobby. Cotton, who can barely stand to acknowledge Hank's existence, is sometimes oddly connected to Bobby. Bobby's openness and warmth, the very qualities Hank doesn't know what to do with, seem to reach something in Cotton that Hank's need for approval never could. Bobby doesn't need Cotton to approve of him. Bobby is genuinely interested in Cotton, in his stories, in who he is. Bobby meets Cotton without the weight of decades of disappointed expectation. And Cotton, perhaps feeling for the first time that he can just be rather than be evaluated, responds. There's something bittersweet about this. Hank spent his whole life trying to get through to his father and never quite managed. Bobby wanders over and chats with Cotton about whatever, and they get along fine. The show doesn't make this cruel. It just lets it be what it is. The way relationships sometimes skip a generation, the way some people can only be vulnerable with someone who isn't keeping score. The episode where Cotton dies is season 12, episode 5, which aired on Veterans Day in 2007. It's called Death Picks Cotton. Cotton has a war flashback at a teppanyaki steakhouse. The Japanese chef flipping food at the grill triggers something, and Cotton climbs onto the grill and suffers severe burns, a broken hip, and an allergic reaction to shellfish. He's hospitalized and he's dying. And here's what he does with the time he has. He fakes his death. He uses a technique he apparently learned in a Japanese prisoner of war camp. He can slow his heartbeat enough to appear dead, and he does this to mess with Hank. Specifically to mess with Hank. He is dying, and he spends some of his remaining energy doing the thing he has always done, which is keeping Hank off balance and keeping himself in control. Then Peggy goes to visit him alone. Peggy, who has been the target of Cotton's contempt for her entire marriage to Hank. Cotton has made clear on many occasions that he thinks Hank could have done better, that Peggy is not good enough, that Peggy is in various ways inadequate. Peggy visits him on what might be his deathbed and gives him the speech he's had coming for decades. She tells him what he has been, she names the damage, she says calmly and directly that she hopes he lives forever in the friendless, spiteful existence he has made for himself. Cotton listens. And then he laughs, this maniacal, delighted laugh, and dies. He dies through spite, essentially. The last thing he does is laugh at having provoked a reaction. Even at the end, it's about staying in control of the interaction. Then Peggy lies to Hank about what Cotton said. She tells Hank something Cotton didn't actually say, something kinder, something that sounds more like a father's piece. She does this because she loves her husband and because Hank is still, even now, still hoping. She can't bear to give him the truth, which is that the conversation Cotton and Hank needed to have never happened, not even at the end. The show does not give Hank closure with his father. This is the right decision. It would be dishonest to give him closure. Some relationships don't provide it. Some fathers die without ever giving their sons the thing those sons have spent their lives working toward, and the son is left with the weight of it unresolved. The show lets this be. It doesn't manufacture a final scene where Cotton, in his last moments, tells Hank he's proud of him, because Cotton isn't that man, not even at the end, and the show knows that making him that man would be a betrayal of everything it said about him. What it does give Hank is Bobby. The argument the show makes quietly, without announcing itself, is that the cycle can be interrupted without being perfectly healed. Hank is not Cotton. He is present for Bobby in ways Cotton was never present for him. He tries, he fails sometimes, and the failures are specific to Hank rather than reruns of Cotton's failures. The wound didn't stop with Hank, but Hank did what he could with what he had, and what he had was already better than what he'd been given. There's a secondary character in Cotton's history worth a brief mention. In season 6, Hank discovers he has a half-brother, a Japanese man named Junichiro, the son of a relationship Cotton had during the occupation of Japan after the war. Hank Hill cleans up after Buck's disasters even when he complains. The son from Japan is a person Cotton actually acknowledges with something resembling warmth, possibly because this son comes without the weight of Cotton's domestic failures, possibly for other reasons the show leaves open. Hank, watching his father be something like kind to this other son, has to process quite a lot in a short amount of time. The show handles this with the same characteristic restraint. It doesn't go big. It lets the situation be as awkward and complicated and sad as it actually is. Cotton Hill is not a sympathetic character exactly. The show doesn't ask you to make peace with what he did to Hank on the grounds of what was done to him. Both things can be true. His suffering was real and his behavior was wrong. The show holds both without collapsing either. And in doing so, it manages to say something true about how damage moves through the world. Not through bad people with bad intentions, but through ordinary people with real wounds who never found the language for them and had to put those wounds somewhere. Hank is where Cotton put them. Bobby is where Hank put something different. That's the story across 3 generations in the background of a show about a propane salesman in Texas. Now, let's talk about Peggy. There's a character who appears late in Cotton's story who is worth noting, which is Dee Dee. Cotton's second wife, or third, the show isn't entirely clear on the exact count, who is significantly younger than him, and who eventually has a baby boy with him named Good Hank. Not Hank, Good Hank. Cotton names his second son Good Hank because the first Hank was, in Cotton's view, not good enough to simply be called Hank without qualification, and then dies before this child is old enough to know him. The show doesn't spend enormous amounts of time with the Good Hank plot, but it's there, and it carries some weight. Cotton's late-life second family, the younger wife, the new son, is the show giving Cotton the chance to potentially do something different and watching him not quite do it. He names the baby Good Hank. Right up until the end, Cotton can't stop comparing Hank to his own idea of what Hank should be. Even the second child is defined primarily in relation to the first child's perceived failure. This is not an unusual pattern. People who have difficulty with the people they love often have more difficulty the more they love them, the higher the stakes, the more the person matters, the more the gap between who that person is and who you need them to be feels unbearable. Cotton loves Hank. The love is visible occasionally in the strangest ways, the intensity of his focus on Hank, the investment he has in Hank's choices, the fact that Hank is almost always his reference point for everything. That's a form of caring. It's badly expressed and causes enormous damage, but the caring is there. What the show never gives us is Cotton's interior. We don't know what's happening inside him. We know the behavior, we know the results. We have some pieces of the backstory, but the show withholds his interiority, his thoughts about his own choices, his awareness or lack of awareness of the damage he's done, his relationship to his own pain, and this withholding is the right call. Giving us Cotton's interior would require the show to provide an explanation for him, and explanations for this kind of cruelty can become unintentionally justifications for it. The show keeps him opaque. His behavior is what we get, and Hank's experience of that behavior is what the show cares about. Hank's quiet hope regarding his father is the most heartbreaking thread across the series. It never goes away entirely. Episodes away from Cotton, you can forget it's there. Then Cotton appears and it's visible again, Hank trying to please him, trying to get some acknowledgement, trying to find an angle. He's been trying all his life. He keeps trying, and the show watches this without comment, lets it be what it is, lets you feel how sad it is that Hank Hill, who is by most measures an admirable and capable man, still needs this from a person who will never give it. The returning Japanese episodes, when Hank discovers his Japanese half-brother, add a specific texture to this. Junichiro, the son Cotton had with a Japanese woman during the post-war occupation, is a person Hank meets for the first time as an adult, someone who is family by blood but a stranger in every other way. Cotton's relationship to Junichiro carries a different quality than his relationship to Hank. Not better exactly, but less loaded. The decades of expectation and disappointment aren't there. Watching Hank navigate this with the same quiet, dignified effort he brings to everything is one of the series' better pieces of work. Hank processes the Japanese half-brother with very little drama. He adjusts. He incorporates this new information into his understanding of his father and his family. He continues. This is what Hank does. He keeps going. The situation changes and he adjusts and he keeps going. The capacity for this, for absorbing difficult information and continuing without falling apart, is perhaps the most significant thing Cotton inadvertently gave him. Margaret Peggy Hill has a very clear sense of who she is. She is a writer, she is intelligent, she's a gifted Spanish speaker, a talented problem solver, a woman of considerable skill and cultural sensitivity. She is, in her own assessment, someone the world has perhaps not yet fully appreciated, though it will. None of this is quite accurate. Peggy writes a column called Musings for the Arlen Bystander, the local newspaper. She has been pitching them for Pulitzer Prize consideration. The Pulitzer Committee has not responded as enthusiastically as she expected. She teaches substitute Spanish at Tom Landry Middle School. Her Spanish is catastrophically incorrect in ways that are sometimes merely wrong and sometimes actively offensive, and she has no idea. She absorbs the reactions of native Spanish speakers in her orbit, confusion, alarm, a certain alarmed politeness, and interprets them as appreciation. This is played consistently for comedy, and it's very funny. The specific gaps between Peggy's self-assessment and her actual performance are precise enough that they feel observed rather than invented. We have all met people who hold themselves in higher regard than the evidence supports. Sometimes we've been that person. The comedy comes from recognition. But here's the thing the show is doing that goes past the comedy. Peggy is also genuinely a lot. She is loyal. She loves Hank with real feeling and consistently looks out for his interests, even when doing so requires her to manage the collision between Hank's rigidity and the world's expectations. She is good with Bobby in ways Hank sometimes isn't. She has a more natural flexibility with who Bobby actually is. She meets him more easily in his actual territory. She is resilient in a way that would be impressive even if you stripped away all the overconfidence. The parachuting accident is the best example of this. In season 4, Peggy takes up skydiving. Her chute doesn't open correctly. She falls through a barn roof. Shasha, she falls from a plane to the ground, goes as an extended arc about her recovery, physically and psychologically. And what it reveals is that underneath the overconfidence and the Pulitzer fantasies and the incorrect Spanish, there is a genuinely tough person. She heals slowly. She works at it. She doesn't let the accident define her as someone who is defeated by it. This is actually the show making an argument about Peggy that goes deeper than the comedy. The overconfidence and the resilience come from the same source. She believes she can do things, that's why she keeps trying them, keeps pitching the column, keeps teaching the Spanish, keeps attempting the parachute. The belief is sometimes wildly miscalibrated, but it's also what gets her through the recovery. You can't easily separate the part of Peggy that's funny from the part of Peggy that's admirable. They're the same part. I've been thinking about this with some real people I know and whether that's actually true in general, whether self-belief that exceeds your evidence is, on balance, a problem or a solution. My sense is it depends quite a lot on what you're doing with it. Peggy's overconfidence in her Spanish causes some genuine trouble. There are students getting information that is simply incorrect, and the cultural implications occasionally go sideways. But her belief in her writing, her persistence in putting the column out, even when nobody particularly asked for it, that's producing something. Even if it's not Pulitzer-worthy, and it isn't, it's something she made and put into the world repeatedly. That's not nothing. The show treats Peggy this way consistently. It doesn't let her become purely a joke. It doesn't let the comedy collapse into contempt. Every time it goes right up to the line of letting Peggy be entirely ridiculous, it pulls back and shows you the real woman underneath, the one who went out of a plane, who fell through a roof, who rebuilt herself afterward, who loves her family with genuine feeling. The comedy and the humanity are inseparable. There's something in Peggy's relationship to Hank that rewards attention. Hank chose Peggy. Hank continues to choose her across 13 seasons with a consistency that is itself a form of statement. He finds the Spanish embarrassing. He finds the Pulitzer pitching slightly baffling. He sometimes has to actively prevent himself from pointing out things that would be unkind. But he loves her. This is clear in every episode they share. Whatever his limitations as a communicator of feeling, his commitment to this marriage is absolute, and Peggy loves him back in her specific, slightly dramatic Peggy way, which includes sometimes grandstanding and sometimes inserting herself into situations where she's not needed and sometimes being wrong in loud ways in public. But she also makes the effort. She shows up for Hank. She supports his interests even when she doesn't fully understand them. She protects him where she can, including, as we've established, from the truth of what his father said in his final moments. There's a version of Peggy's character that would be mean if the show wrote her differently. A version where the comedy is about humiliating her. King of the Hill doesn't do this. The comedy is about the gap between her self-image and reality. But the show's affection for her is always visible. You're laughing with the show at Peggy's situation, not at the show's expense of Peggy's dignity. The distinction matters. What Peggy says to me across the series is something about the relationship between self-knowledge and forward motion. The fully self-aware person who knows exactly how good they are can sometimes be paralyzed by that knowledge. They see the gap between where they are and where they need to be, and they don't move. Peggy sees no such gap. She moves, she keeps moving. She's been submitting to the Pulitzer Committee for years without a response. She will probably keep submitting. And while the Pulitzer Committee's continued silence is funny, the movement itself is something. The world, on balance, needs more people who believe in themselves beyond what the evidence strictly supports. Just perhaps not quite as much as Peggy does, and perhaps with a Spanish tutor. Now, speaking of the gap between self-image and reality and people who believe they see things others can't, let's talk about Dale. The Spanish disasters are worth being specific about because the show is very precise in how it handles them. Peggy's errors aren't random. They're consistently, systematically wrong in ways that suggest she learned Spanish from a source that was itself wrong, and she has been adding to that foundation faithfully for years. The confidence is completely disconnected from the accuracy. She delivers incorrect Spanish with the fluency and tone of someone who is very good at Spanish. This is technically a very specific failure mode. There are episodes where students have asked her genuine questions and received genuinely bad information, and the show lets this sit without immediately correcting it. There are episodes where she interacts with native Spanish speakers who react with polite bewilderment that Peggy interprets as appreciation. There is the sense, building across the series, that somewhere in Ireland there are students whose understanding of Spanish has been permanently bent by their contact with Peggy Hill's substitute teaching. And yet, Peggy's relationship with the Spanish-speaking community in Ireland, despite the terrible Spanish, is not the mockery you'd expect. She connects with people. Peggy fails to connect with the Spanish-speaking community. Age is wrong, but the warmth is real. And the show suggests that the warmth in many of these encounters is what actually matters. Not what she's saying, the fact that she is saying something with obvious positive intention. Her relationship with Bobby is worth dwelling on in this section because it's different from Hank's relationship with Bobby in specific ways that reveal different things about Peggy. Peggy doesn't have a template for what Bobby is supposed to be. She has a template for herself, the award-winning columnist, the gifted Spanish speaker, the person the world will eventually recognize. But she doesn't impose that template on Bobby. She lets him be Bobby. She laughs at his bits. She engages with his food interests. She is, in the area of accepting Bobby as he is, genuinely better at it than Hank, not because she's tried harder, but because she doesn't have the same specific vision of what a son should be. This is interesting because it suggests that Peggy's self-delusion, which causes problems in some areas of her life, actually protects her here. She's so focused on her own sense of herself that she doesn't have leftover energy to impose an alternative sense of Bobby on Bobby. He gets to be what he is. There's a thread across the series where Peggy is occasionally right about things in ways that nobody credits her for. She'll have an instinct about a situation, a person, a dynamic, what's actually happening, and it will turn out to be accurate, and nobody will particularly acknowledge that she got it right. Hank will move on to the next thing, the situation will resolve, and Peggy, having been correct, will file this away in the ongoing internal argument she has with a world that hasn't fully recognized her yet. I find this detail genuinely sympathetic. The show is not saying Peggy is right about everything, she demonstrably isn't. But it's noting that she's right about some things and that those things go unacknowledged in the same way her errors go unacknowledged, which means her overall accuracy rate doesn't improve her reputation at all. This is mildly unfair in a way the show seems to know is mildly unfair. What does Peggy ultimately say about belief in yourself? I think she says that the belief is the mechanism, not the content. She is not right about what she believes about herself. But the belief is what keeps her going, keeps her submitting the column, keeps her teaching the Spanish, keeps her trying things and recovering from the things that go wrong. The parachuting accident is the most dramatic version of this, but it's happening at a lower level constantly throughout the show. Something goes wrong, Peggy absorbs it into her ongoing narrative about herself, and then she keeps going. She always keeps going. That's worth more than it might appear. Dale Gribble's view of the world is this: the government is watching, everything is connected. The fluoride in the water is not what they say it is. The moon landing was at least partly staged. Your social security number is how they track you, and Dale has taken steps. He operates under the alias Rusty Shackelford for purposes he declines to specify. He wears sunglasses indoors, he exterminates pests for a living, and genuinely believes this work sometimes puts him in the crosshairs of powers larger than he can fully name. This is all played as comedy, and it's very funny because Dale commits to all of it, with absolute sincerity. He's not performing the conspiracy theorist character. He is the conspiracy theorist character from the inside, without irony, entirely convinced. His theories evolve between episodes. The specific conspiracies multiply. He has a van with equipment in it. Here is what makes Dale Gribble interesting rather than just a recurring joke. The man who sees conspiracies everywhere, who is alert at all times to the possibility that things are not what they seem, that someone is hiding something, that the official story is not the whole story. This same man spent approximately 14 years not noticing something happening approximately 10 feet from him in his own life. His wife Nancy had an extended affair with a man named John Redcorn. John Redcorn is a Native American healer who comes to the house periodically to treat Nancy's headaches. He has been treating these headaches in various senses since roughly the beginning of the show. Dale is aware of John Redcorn. He thinks John Redcorn's alternate Dale Gribble thinks John Redcorn's alternative medicine is genuinely effective, but does not make a major issue of it. Our vigilance. Remarkably unbothered by the ongoing presence of a handsome man who visits his wife regularly. The child he believes is his son, Joseph, is biologically John Redcorn's son. Joseph looks exactly like John Redcorn. He becomes taller and more visibly not Dale's biological child with each passing season. Most of Arlen 1 gradually understands, either knows or suspects. Dale doesn't figure it out. The show presents this with real care, and I want to be precise about what it's doing, because it would be easy to read this as the show simply mocking Dale. It's not, or rather, it's doing something more interesting than that. It's noting that we can be simultaneously very good at seeing certain things and completely blind to others, particularly the things closest to us, the ones that would hurt most to see. Dale has constructed a worldview around distrust of institutions and systems and official narratives. The government lies, corporations lie, authority lies. These are the things Dale has decided to be alert to. What he hasn't prepared himself for is the possibility that the lie could be inside his own house, inside his own marriage, from a person he loves. Because to see that, he'd have to turn the same scrutiny inward that he applies to the moon landing. And the moon landing didn't come with the cost that this would. The show handles this compassionately. Nancy, by the end of the series, has ended the affair. She's committed to Dale. She has come back to her marriage and is genuinely trying. Dale is happy. In his version of events, there was nothing to figure out. His marriage was fine. His son is his son. This is the story he lives in, and the show unusually lets him live in it. It doesn't blow the thing up in a dramatic revelation episode. It lets Dale's story be the story Dale has. And Dale does love his family. He loves Nancy with a particular devotion that coexists awkwardly with the sunglasses and the Rusty Shackelford alias and the van. He loves Joseph, loudly, explicitly, in all the ways he has trouble being with other people. He is very good at being a father to Joseph. He is present, he is engaged, he teaches Joseph things, many of them conspiracy adjacent, and a few of them actually useful. He shows up for his kid. There's an episode in the later seasons where Dale's father, Bug Gribble, comes to the rodeo, and Dale is confronted with, really, the fact that his father is gay and has been in a long-term relationship with a man. Bug has been living his true life. Eventually, he has a partner, he seems happy. Dale, who has spent his entire adult life being suspicious of every institution and official narrative, suddenly has to contend with something that doesn't fit into any of his frameworks. His father being gay is not a government conspiracy. It's just a personal truth that his father kept from him for a long time, probably because the world in which Bug Gribble came of age made it necessary to keep it. Dale works through it, awkwardly in the Dale way, with theories that initially point in the wrong direction before arriving somewhere more honest. He ends up accepting his father's partner. He adjusts. The episode is quietly, unexpectedly moving in a way that several of Dale's better episodes are. Underneath the paranoia and the Rusty Shackelford persona, there is actually a person who has some capacity for growth when the situation demands it. What Dale says to me across the whole series is something about how our defenses work. The things we're most vigilant about are often not the things that hurt us. The defenses we build are usually in response to old threats, not the actual vulnerabilities of our current lives. Dale's conspiracism is probably something that developed in relation to a world that felt uncontrollable and untrustworthy in ways that had nothing to do with fluoride. And the fluoride theories keep him busy enough that he doesn't have to look at the things that actually threaten him, which are the same things that threaten everyone. Love, loss, the people who are close to us, the possibility of being wrong about what matters. He is, underneath the conspiracy theories and the sunglasses and the Rusty Shackelford, a loyal friend. He shows up to the alley, he shows up for his family in his way. He is there. The armor is strange and the worldview is peculiar, but the person inside it is real. And speaking of people who wear a kind of armor and who are trying to find their footing in a world that didn't quite design itself with them in mind, let's talk about Con. John Redcorn is, as a character, more complicated than his initial function in the show suggests. He begins as essentially a punchline, the man having an affair with Dale's wife that everyone knows about except Dale. But across the series, the show develops him with more texture than that setup requires. He cares about his heritage, his music, his indigenous identity in a way that sits alongside the affair rather than being defined by it. He has a relationship with Joseph, his biological son, that is constrained by the situation but that the show depicts with genuine feeling. He can see Joseph growing up next door, knowing what he knows, unable to say it. This is actually a poignant situation when you sit with it. John Redcorn watches his son grow up believing he's Dale's son. He watches Dale parent Joseph. Whit, John Redcorn watches Dale parent Joseph with pained awareness. In physical appearance, the height, the build, the look that should make everything obvious, and watches Dale remain oblivious. What John Redcorn feels about this, the show mostly leaves to implication. He carries it. He ends the affair, he tries to do the right thing given the specific constraints of the situation. Whether the right thing in retrospect was to have started it in the first place is a question the show doesn't quite ask, but it's there in the background. Nancy's arc across the series is also worth noting. She ends the affair. This is not presented as a dramatic revelation scene. The show is characteristically understated about it. She just comes back to Dale, makes a choice, commits, and the show treats this as the ending that Dale deserves, which is interesting in its own right. The show is kind to Dale about this. It doesn't make him find out and process the betrayal. It just gives him a wife who chose him. Whether you find this satisfying or slightly too convenient depends on how much you want the show to pull the rug out from under its own most comforting fiction. I find it satisfying. It fits the show's general approach, which is to protect a certain amount of innocent happiness where it can, Bobby's happiness, Dale's happiness, as long as the protection doesn't require dishonesty from the show itself. The show isn't lying to us about what happened. It's just choosing to end the story at the point where Dale is okay. That's a humane choice. The specific quality of Dale's paranoia and what it reveals about human psychology generally is worth one more thought. Paranoia in its more benign forms, and Dale's is relatively benign, focused on abstract governmental threats rather than specific people in his life, often functions as a way of locating the threat in a manageable place. The government is threatening, the fluoride is suspicious, the surveillance is ongoing. These are things Dale can theorize about, prepare for, build countermeasures against. They are not things that will phone him at home and tell him his marriage is not what he thinks it is. The specific threat, the personal threat, the one that would actually land, that's the one the paranoid system tends to exclude. It has to exclude it because the paranoid system is there to keep the person safe. And the person cannot be kept safe from their own love, from the things they care about too much to view through the same suspicious lens they apply to everything else. Dale loves his family. That love is the blind spot in his conspiracy detection apparatus. And in the end, the show seems to regard this as something close to grace. When the Supanusen phone family first moves in next door to the hills, one of the first exchanges in the show is Hank and the guys asking Khan where he's from. Khan says Laos. The guys look at each other. One of them asks, "So are you Chinese or Japanese?" Khan stares at them. "I am Laotian." They nod politely and show no evidence of understanding what Laotian means. This moment is funny, and it's also doing something precise. It's showing you, in about 15 seconds, the specific texture of what Khan is walking into by moving to Arlen, Texas. These are not bad people, exactly. They're just men whose knowledge of Southeast Asia is fairly theoretical and who aren't equipped to absorb new information about it immediately. And Khan has moved his family into a house on their street, and this is where they all live now. Khan Supanusen phone, and yes, the full name, which Hank mispronounces in various ways across the series, is a systems analyst. He is educated, he is professional, he is, by any reasonable measure, quite accomplished. He is also desperately, exhaustingly concerned with being seen as accomplished. This is the distinction the show keeps making with Khan. The achievement is real, but the need to have the achievement recognized is also real. And the second thing is more visible than the first. He wants to be in the right country club. He wants his daughter Connie to go to the right schools and achieve the right results and make the right connections. He wants Min, his wife, to be in the right social circles. He looks at Hank and the alley guys and finds them baffling. These men with their beer and their propane and their apparently minimal social ambitions. And he doesn't understand, initially, why someone would choose to live this way when there are more impressive ways to live. Min has her own parallel story. She is navigating the Arlen women's social structure, trying to get into the right circles, dealing with the specific indignities of being the new family on the street in a town that's been the same for a long time. Her ambitions and frustrations run alongside Khan's, often in the same direction, occasionally colliding with his. Connie is doing what children of parents like Khan and Min do, carrying two people's worth of expectations in addition to her own. She is an overachiever by both temperament and necessity. She's the kid who studies because she has to and because she would anyway, and it's not always possible to tell which is which. Her relationship with Bobby is one of the sweeter through lines in the show. The two of them are genuinely different people who genuinely like each other, and the show lets that be something real rather than making it purely comedic. The Hank-Khan relationship evolves across the series in a way that's one of the underrated pleasures of watching the show in sequence. They start as mutual antagonists. Khan finds Hank provincial. Hank finds Khan difficult to read and slightly aggressive. They are both, in different ways, committed to doing things correctly. They both have strong opinions about how things should be done. They are more alike than either of them would initially acknowledge, and the show uses this to let them discover, slowly and without making a speech about it, something like genuine respect, and eventually something approaching friendship. Not an emotional friendship, more of a mutual acknowledgement, which for both of them is quite a lot. There's an episode from later in the series Just Another Manic Con Day Waksh, which aired on Adult Swim slightly after the original Fox run ended, where Hank accidentally advises Con to skip picking up his medication. Hank doesn't know the medication is a mood stabilizer. Con is managing manic depression. Without the medication, he destabilizes. The episode handles this with more care than you might expect. It's not played entirely for laughs. And the show's treatment of Con's mental health is relatively thoughtful for what it is. What I find interesting about this episode is that it fills in something the show had been suggesting about Con for a while without stating explicitly. The drive, the status anxiety, the intensity, these things read differently when you understand that Con has been managing something significant, probably for a long time, probably without adequate acknowledgement from the people around him. And Hank's accidental role in destabilizing him is used by the show to examine what happens when you give advice without knowing the full picture of someone's life, which is most advice, most of the time. The broader thing King of the Hill does with Con is resist reducing him to a stereotype, which the show was occasionally guilty of in its early seasons and became better about over time. Con is not the archetypal immigrant striving to assimilate. He's a specific person with specific ambitions and specific frustrations and a specific relationship with belonging that doesn't resolve neatly. He is not fully of Arlen, and he doesn't entirely want to be. And yet Arlen is where he is, and where his family is, and where his life has its texture. The exhaustion of belonging somewhere that wasn't designed with you in mind, this is what Con's story is about. The constant calibration required. The gap between how you see yourself and how people around you see you. The specific loneliness of being accomplished in a context where your accomplishments are only partially legible. Con is doing real work in his life, and the people around him sometimes don't know what to do with it. By the end of the series, he has found something in Arlen. Not everything he wanted, but something. The Hill family is next door. The hostility has softened into its own strange warmth. Connie has her own life happening. Min has made her way in. The finale's final image includes Con grilling in his yard alongside the Hills. A small gesture from a man who has been pushing his daughter hard for 13 years, and a signal that something in him has relaxed slightly. Right? That's a journey for Con. Now, there's one more person from Rainy Street who deserves their own section, and she came to the street from a harder starting point than almost anyone else we've talked about. The evolution of the Hank and Con relationship is one of the show's most satisfying slow burns, partly because neither man would ever describe it as a relationship. They would both probably describe it as living next door to someone. But across the series, something real develops. A grudging respect that comes from proximity and from the slow accumulation of evidence that the other person is, despite everything, doing things in a way that has integrity to it. Hank recognizes Con's competence eventually. He might not know exactly what a systems analyst does, but he knows that Con is taken seriously in his professional world, that he works hard, that he has a specific expertise that earns respect in contexts Hank doesn't fully understand. This is sufficient for Hank. He doesn't need to understand something completely to respect it. He respects the propane installer he's never met because the installer's work is good. He can extend a version of this to Con. Con recognizes Hank's integrity. This also takes time because Con arrives in Arlen with a set of assumptions about what kind of person Hank is: provincial, limited, not someone whose opinion carries weight. And then episode by episode, season by season, he keeps encountering Hank doing the right thing in situations where doing the right thing costs him something. Con has enough of his own integrity to recognize this. He absorbs it. He adjusts his assessment. By the later seasons, they can work together. They can ask each other for things. There are episodes where Hank helps Con or Con helps Hank, and neither of them makes a big deal of it, because making a big deal of it would require acknowledging the relationship has become something it couldn't be described as at the start. Connie and Bobby's relationship deserves its own note here. Connie is carrying an enormous amount. her parents' expectations, her own considerable academic drive, the specific pressures of being an overachiever in a town that doesn't always know what to do with overachievers. Bobby is the person in her life who is most consistently just interested in her as a person rather than as a set of achievements. He doesn't care about her grades, he cares about what she thinks about things. This is rarer for Connie than you might expect. Their relationship, which moves between friendship and something more and back to friendship across the series, is one of the quieter arcs the show carries. It doesn't get many big episodes, it's just there, running alongside everything else. Two young people who like each other navigating the complexities of that as 13-year-olds do. The Manic Depression episode, Just Another Manic Con Day, which aired on Adult Swim after the original Fox run, is doing something the show rarely does, which is looking at mental health directly rather than at its behavioral consequences. Khan has been managing manic depression for what the episode implies is a long time. He has a system. The system requires medication. When Hank accidentally disrupts the system, not maliciously, just through the ordinary Hank pattern of giving advice based on incomplete information, the consequences are visible and serious. What I find most valuable about this episode isn't the comedy of Khan destabilized, which is there. It's the way the episode frames Khan's condition as something he's been handling quietly all along, not as something that has defined his life or limited it. He's built a successful career and a family and a place in the world, but as something that has required management, a background reality. The episode's point is less about the crisis than about what it reveals, that Khan has been doing this work consistently without most of the people in his life knowing about it. That's an honest portrait of what managing mental health often looks like. Not dramatic episodes visible to everyone. Quiet, ongoing management, private, alongside everything else, mostly invisible until something disrupts the system. The show's immigrant family at the center, the Souffenus in phones, is doing something that American television doesn't often do, which is depicting the specific experience of a family that is both very American and carrying something from elsewhere. They watch their daughter navigate a world that is entirely familiar to her and partially foreign to them. They maintain some practices and lose others. They are, after 13 seasons, genuinely of Ireland, not despite their background, but including it. Lou Ann Plater arrives at the Hill House in the very first episode of the series, and her arrival is explained quickly and matter-of-factly. Her mother, Leanne, attacked her father, Hoyt, with a fork and went to prison. Her father's absent for other reasons. She needs somewhere to live. She's Hank's niece on his wife's side. She moves in. This backstory, delivered so briskly that you could miss it, is actually quite serious. Luann comes from a home that was not safe. Her parents' relationship was violent. The people who were supposed to be the stable foundation of her childhood were not stable. She arrived at the Hills with quite literally nowhere else to go. What she found there was Hank and Peggy. And this arrangement turns out to be, across the series, something genuinely good for everyone involved in ways that none of them fully anticipated. Hank does not initially know what to do with Luann. She's a young woman. In the final episode of King of the Hill, the closing image shows Hank and Bobby grilling together in the backyard. She doesn't fit neatly into any existing category in his mental map of how to be a family member to someone. But the show is careful to show his affection growing, the awkward but genuine care that develops between Hank and Luann as she lives in the house, as he sees her work toward things, as she comes to him for various forms of guidance that he provides imperfectly and entirely. He functions as a surrogate father to her in practice, even if he would never quite describe it that way. She comes to him when things are hard. He shows up for her. This relationship, not biological, not planned, arrived at sideways through the specific logistics of who needed a place to live, becomes one of the warmer things in the show. Luann has dreams, she's in beauty school, she has various aspirations toward television and performing and a kind of life larger than Arlen. The show treats these dreams with the same ambivalence it treats most things, not mocking them, not fully endorsing them, just watching to see what Luan does with them. She's also genuinely skilled at what she trains for. Hair and beauty, she's actually good at this. The show doesn't use her aspirations as a vehicle for comedy about the gap between her ambitions and her abilities, which would be the easy version. Her abilities are real. What's uncertain is whether the path she wants is available to her, given where she started and what she carries. What Luan eventually finds is Lucky. Lucky Kleinschmidt is a man who lives on a settlement from a Costco slip and fall accident. He is not what most people's parents would have in mind for their daughter. He is kind, genuinely. He loves Luan. He treats her well. They have a daughter together named Gracie, and by the finale, Luan and Lucky and Gracie are a unit. Small, specific, clearly working, that the show presents without irony or condescension. This is King of the Hill saying something it says in various ways throughout, that a life that looks from the outside like it didn't go quite according to plan can still be a good life. Luan didn't become a television star. She didn't leave Arlen for somewhere more glamorous. She married a man who is difficult to explain to strangers and had a baby and found something that is hers. The show doesn't qualify this or make it bittersweet. It presents it warmly. One thing I want to acknowledge carefully here. Luan was voiced by Brittany Murphy, who died in December 2009, shortly after the original run of the show ended. She was 32. The loss was sudden and devastating to people who knew her, and watching Luan now carries a different texture knowing that. There's something in the warmth and the specific animation of that character, the effort and the silliness and the genuine heart of her, that feels more precious in retrospect. Luan is a beautiful character. Brittany Murphy made her that. The thing Luan's story says across the whole series is about the question of starting points. She did not start from an advantageous position. Her childhood was difficult. The support structures that most people rely on were damaged or absent. She arrived at the Hill House with not much, and the show watches her build something from that not much, imperfectly and specifically, and without the help of anyone rewriting the past for her. That's a realistic portrait of what resilience looks like. It doesn't look like overcoming everything and arriving somewhere spectacular. It looks like finding the people who can help you, doing the work you're actually suited for, and ending up somewhere that is genuinely yours, even if it's smaller than you once imagined. Luan does this. The show honors it. Now let's step back from the individual characters for a moment and talk about the place they all share. Luan's beauty school ambitions are worth taking seriously as the show takes them, not as comedy about someone aiming too low, but as a genuine vocational path that she pursues with real commitment. She studies, she practices, she gets good at it. The show isn't interested in the joke about a girl from a troubled home ending up in beauty school. It's interested in the person who found something she can do well and pursued it. Her relationship with Hank in the beauty school context is one of the small pleasures of the series. Hank doesn't fully understand why Luan cares about this. He understands craft. He has his propane, but hair and beauty don't map onto his category of things that deserve serious care. So he is occasionally slightly awkward about it, the way Hank is occasionally awkward about things Bobby cares about, and then he watches Luan actually work and the competence registers with him. The competence always registers with Hank. There's an episode where Luan cuts Hank's hair, or attempts to, or does something in this territory, and it becomes a vehicle for the show to put them together in a context where she's the expert and he has to defer to her. Hank deferring to anyone is always an event. Hank deferring to Luan specifically, the girl he took in who he wasn't sure what to do with, is quietly significant. The relationship has traveled somewhere in that moment. Lucky is a character the show handles with more care than his initial description would suggest. A man who lives on a Costco slip-and-fall settlement. Okay, that's the premise. The person is warmer than the premise. He is genuinely kind. He has a quality that's hard to articulate, a kind of low-stakes contentment with his own life, an absence of the status anxiety that drives several of the show's other characters that makes him easy to be around. He doesn't need things from Luann other than what she gives him, which is more than you can say for a lot of relationships. Hank's acceptance of Lucky is another one of the slow burns in the series. He can't initially see what Lucky offers Luann. He is aware of the Costco thing. He is aware that Lucky doesn't have a conventional career or a conventional trajectory or any of the things Hank tends to use as proxies for character. And then he keeps watching Lucky be kind to Luann. Keep showing up for her, keep treating her well, and eventually, Hank being Hank, the man who recognizes integrity when he sees it regardless of the container, he adjusts. Baby Gracie's arrival in the show's later seasons gives Luann and Lucky a different kind of grounding. They are now parents. They are doing the thing that parents do, trying to figure out what they're doing in real time, with a small person who depends on them in a world that didn't give either of them especially good models to work from. The show gives them warmth in this without making it sentimental. They are trying. That's the show's most consistent form of praise. The finale glimpse of Luann and Lucky with Gracie is brief but complete. She has a family. It's small and specific and hers. She didn't start from an advantageous position. The fork, the prison, the absent father, the arrival at the Hill House with nowhere else to go, and she built something from that position. That's not a small thing. The show knows it's not a small thing. There's something in Luann's arc that the show is careful about, which is not making her difficult beginning the explanation for her. It's part of who she is. It shaped her, but she is not reducible to it. She's also her warmth and her vanity and her genuine skill and her love for her family. The backstory is a context, not a destination. Where she ends up is not defined by where she started. That's what the show gives her, and it's a generous gift. One quality of Luann's I don't think gets enough attention is her loyalty. She is loyal to the Hills even when they're difficult. She has a warmth that isn't performed, the kind of warmth that people who've had genuinely unstable early lives sometimes develop, because they know what the alternative feels like and they don't take the good things for granted. The beauty school arc is something I find myself defending mentally whenever I see people dismiss it. Luann didn't drift into beauty school. She found something she's good at, committed to it, and got better at it. The show tracks her competence there with the same quiet respect it tracks Hank's propane knowledge. Not with speeches about how great she is, just by showing her work and letting the quality speak. And there's a moment in the later seasons where you undid, not the hairstylist her earliest aspirations pointed toward, not the television star her earliest aspirations pointed toward, a mother, a wife, a woman with a life she chose. The show hands her this without ceremony. It just shows you Lucky and Gracie and Luann at the cookout and lets the image say the rest. It says quite a lot. Now let's step back from the characters for a moment and talk about the place they all share. It's based on Richardson, Texas, a suburb of Dallas where Mike Judge once lived. On Richardson, Texas, a suburb of Dallas where Mike Judge grew up. You can feel the specificity of someone who actually knows a place, who knows the texture of it, the way the heat sits differently in August than in May, the way certain kinds of town have a particular relationship with the sky because there's nothing interrupting the horizon. Arlen has this quality. The world of the show feels like it was observed rather than invented. The geography of Arlen that the show returns to is quite small. Rainy Street, where the Hills and the Gribbles and Bill and Boomhauer all live in adjacent houses. Strickland Propane, where Hank works. Tom Landry Middle School, where Bobby attends. The Alley. The various local businesses that function as recurring locations, Sugarfoot's BBQ, the Mega Lomart, the various churches, the golf course, the Arlen bystander offices where Peggy files her columns. These locations build up across 13 seasons until they feel as familiar as somewhere you've actually been. There are things that define Arlen as a community. Football matters seriously in the way that football matters in Texas generally, not as entertainment exactly, but as a shared cultural practice, something people do together that organizes a chunk of social life around it. The local high school team is a point of civic pride. Tom Landry Middle School, named for the Dallas Cowboys coach, is not named that ironically. It is named that because in Arlen, that seems right. The weather is a presence in the show in a way it isn't in most animated television. It's hot. Texas hot, August hot. The kind of heat where you understand why people stand in alleys rather than indoors, because at least outside there might be a breeze. The show uses this. The heat is in the visual style, in the particular quality of the flat light, in the beer cans in the alley making more sense because it's warm and the beer's cold and you need something. Arlen has the specific texture of a place that has been a place for a while. Not old in the way that coastal cities are old, but settled. People have been on Rainy Street for decades. They know each other's rhythms. This produces both the warmth of genuine community and the occasional suffocation of everyone knowing your business, which the show captures with equal affection. What I find most interesting about how King of the Hill depicts Arlen is that it's not a satire. This is the thing that distinguishes it most sharply from what you might expect of an animated comedy set in a small Texas suburb. It is not making a joke about this place or these people. It is not positioning itself as superior to Arlen and using the show's viewpoint to look down at the inhabitants with knowing condescension. It loves them. It loves the place. The show was made by Mike Judge, who grew up in this world, and Greg Daniels, and a writing staff that brought their own experiences of ordinary American community to it. You can feel that origin in the show. The love is not nostalgic exactly. The show is clear-eyed about Arlen's limitations, about the ways it can be provincial and slow to change, and resistant to anything that doesn't fit its existing picture of itself. But it holds those limitations alongside a genuine affection for what the place is and what it gives the people in it. There's a kind of American life that rarely gets depicted in prestige television or in most popular culture. Working class and middle class, suburban South, deeply local, with values and practices that the broader cultural conversation either ignores or condescends to. King of the Hill depicts this life, takes it seriously, and finds within it genuine depth. Hank Hill is not a figure of pity or comedy or rural stereotype. He is a complete person living a life that has real value in a community that functions because people like him care about it. The town is a character. After 13 seasons, you know Arlen the way you know a place you've lived in, the distances between things, the familiar storefronts, the particular quality of an evening in the alley. When the show ends, the loss of Arlen is part of the loss. You're not just saying goodbye to Hank and Bobby and Dale and Bill and Boomhauer. You're saying goodbye to the final image of King of the Hill quietly celebrates the enduring community of Arlen. Spent time. The final image of the series makes this explicit. The camera pulls up from Arlen at dusk, the same motion as the very first episode, which opened with a camera descending on Arlen at dawn. The bookend is gentle and unforced. Dawn when we arrived. Dusk as we leave. The town continuing because it always does, whether or not we're watching. What does Arlen say about place and community? I think it says that belonging somewhere is not automatic. It has to be tended. It requires showing up repeatedly over years and being part of things in the specific mundane ways that communities are maintained. Knowing your neighbors, participating in local institutions, being there for the events that seem small but that are the substance of a shared life. Hank tends Arlen. He maintains it by being the kind of person who shows up. The alley exists because 4 people keep going to it. Strickland Propane functions because Hank cares about it. The neighborhood is the neighborhood partly because of what Hank puts into it. This is not a romantic argument. It's not saying that community is effortless or natural or that small-town life is automatically wholesome. It's saying that communities are made by the choices of the people in them, sustained by the people who choose repeatedly to show up and participate and care about whether the place functions. Hank makes those choices every day, and Arlen is the result. That's a lesson, a quiet one, delivered across 13 seasons without ever being stated, but it's there. Now let's talk about how it all ends. The specific geography of Arlen that the show establishes across its run is worth thinking about, because it's not an accident. The flat streets, the adjacent houses, the way everything important is close together, Rainy Street, Strickland Propane, the school, the alley, so that you could walk between them in 10 minutes. This is intentional. It creates a world that has the texture of a real community rather than the sprawl of a television backdrop. You feel the proximity. You feel that these people are genuinely in each other's lives because they live near each other, and the town is small enough that you can't avoid the people you're near. Football in Texas is worth dwelling on for a moment because the show gets it right in a way that shows, without the specific cultural reference point, often don't. Football in Texas is not exactly what football is elsewhere. It's a civic practice. It's the organizing principle of certain weeks in autumn. It's the thing that fills the stadium in a way that the high school orchestra concert does not, and nobody pretends this is complicated or problematic. The town gathers for the football game. This is what Arlen does, and King of the Hill depicts this without condescension and without unearned nostalgia, just as a fact of the place, which has its warmth and its limitations and is what it is. The show's love letter quality is worth naming precisely because it could so easily have been otherwise. And I noticed this most on rewatch, when you know the characters well enough to see exactly where a different writer's room would have taken the satirical turn and let the irony curl. King of the Hill almost never does this. The creative choices that make it warm rather than cutting are visible once you look for them. It's the decision to let Hank be right about things regularly. It's the decision to give Peggy genuine competence in some areas alongside her overconfidence in others. It's the decision to show the alley as a real support structure rather than a joke about men not talking. Each of these choices individually keeps the show from tilting into condescension. Collectively, they produce something that feels like genuine affection for the people and the place. There are animated shows that use a similar setting, a kind of middle American community with conventional values and specific local color, as a vehicle for satire. The characters are vehicles for jokes about the type rather than specific people who happen to embody the type. King of the Hill is not that. The characters aren't types with Hank's name and Dale's name. They're specific people. Hank is not every rigid Texas man. He's Hank Hill, and the show knows the difference between those two things. Arlen also functions as the show's argument that place matters. Not place as abstract concept, not community in the vague sense that word sometimes gets used, but specific place. This flat suburb of Dallas with this specific alley and these specific people and this specific heat. The show is not saying that all places are equally good or that you should stay wherever you started. It's saying that when you commit to a place, when you're there long enough and invest in it enough, it becomes yours in a way that has real value. Hank has committed to Arlen. Arlen is his, not in a property sense, in the sense that it's where his life is, where his people are, where the things that mean something to him live. That kind of belonging is worth something. The show thinks it might be worth quite a lot. The town at dusk in the finale's closing shot is the show making this argument one final time without words. Just Arlen at evening, the grills going, the people gathered. The place that became a character, the place that became, for those of us who watched, somewhere we'd been. To Sirloin with Love is the 20th episode of the 13th season of King of the Hill. It aired on September 13th, 2009. It is the series finale of the original run, 259 episodes after the first one, 13 years after the show began. It is about meat. Specifically, it is about Bobby Hill discovering that he has an extraordinary ability to grade the quality of cuts of beef. He can look at a side of beef and identify its characteristics with a precision that trained professionals spend years developing. He can see what others miss. He has, it turns out, a palate and an eye for this, a real talent, developed from years of caring about food in the quiet, specific way Bobby cares about things that interest him. And Hank finds out. Here's Hank Hill's face when he learns that his son is genuinely talented at something to do with meat. With grilling, with the evaluation of beef quality, with something that is, in Hank's world, in his actual domain of expertise and passion and identity. His reaction is not performed. It is not the strained, I love my son even though he's different, acceptance that Hank has been practicing for years. It is genuine, uncomplicated joy. It is relief, maybe, at finding the shared ground he's been looking for. It is a father discovering that he and his son have been speaking related languages all along and just hadn't found the right translator. The episode puts Bobby on the meat examination team at Heimlich County Community College. Hank is ecstatic. Bobby is pleased with Hank's ecstasy. Things are going well. Then Bobby discovers that his teammates are not the kind of people he wants to be around. They don't love meat, they want to win. They are willing to do things Bobby finds wrong. The episode has them pepper spraying rival teams, engaging in various unsporting behaviors in order to claim victory. Bobby wants to quit. Hank, caught up in finally having a thing with Bobby, insists he stay. Bobby cannot adequately explain how bad the teammates are. Hank doesn't listen closely enough. This is Hank being Hank. He has the picture in his head, my son is on a team, we are doing this together, this is what I wanted. And the picture is too compelling for him to hear clearly what Bobby is actually telling him. He defaults to the familiar error, seeing the thing he wants to see rather than the thing that's actually there. Then events develop, as they do, and Hank comes to understand that Bobby was right. The team is a problem. Hank tells them this directly and without much diplomacy, which is also Hank being Hank. He apologizes to Bobby in the Hank way, not as a speech, but as an acknowledgement, brief and honest. Bobby, separated from his useless teammates, competes alone at the state championship. He has to identify a flaw in a side of beef that the judges and all the other competitors have missed. He finds it, a tiny, specific imperfection. He gets it right. They win. The Hill family comes home, or rather, they arrive in the backyard where someone has set up a small grill, a gift, a surprise, meant for Bobby after the competition. Bobby sees it, Hank sees it, and without anything else needing to be said, they fire it up. Hank and Bobby at the grill together. The neighbors come. This is important. The ending of King of the Hill is not a private family moment. It's what it's always been. A community gathering in the backyard, drawn by the smell of the grill, people finding their way to the same place at the end of the day. Con tells Connie to take the night off from studying. Dale is there. Bill is there. Luann and Lucky and baby Gracie. Boomhauer. Boomhauer goes home briefly to get something. He puts his wallet on his dresser. It falls open. Inside, a badge. Texas Ranger. That's what Boomhauer does. That's what he's been doing quietly for 13 seasons while everyone wondered. The revelation is played with no drama whatsoever, just a wallet, a badge, a moment. The show has the confidence to reveal this in a visual aside rather than a scene, because that's how King of the Hill does things, quietly, without making a speech about it. Then the camera goes up. Overhead shot of Arlen at dusk, the mirror image of the very first shot of the very first episode, which was an overhead shot descending on Arlen at dawn. The town is there, the alley is there, the grills are going, people are together. That's it. That's the ending. I've been thinking about why this finale works as well as it does, given how apparently simple it is. No major revelations, no crisis resolved, no villain defeated, just a cookout in the backyard with the neighbors and a family that has finally found one of the things they were looking for. I think it works because of everything that came before it. 13 years of Hank trying to find the shared language with Bobby. 13 years of Bobby being completely himself without apology. 13 years of showing up to the alley, to the grill, to the street, to the community. By the time you get to this finale, you understand what the cookout means. You understand what it means that Bobby wins the competition alone and Hank's face does what it does when he hears about it. You understand what Boomhauer's wallet means because you've been wondering for 13 years. The finale is earned by the accumulation of everything that preceded it. It doesn't try to be more than that accumulation. It just lets the accumulation arrive somewhere. Here's the argument King of the Hill makes across 13 seasons as I understand it. The good life is not the exceptional life. It is not the life lived at scale or with wide recognition, or with the kind of story that gets told in magazines. The good life is the life lived with care for your work, your family, your community, the people who stand in your alley on Tuesday evenings. It is the life of someone who shows up, who does the job correctly, who stays when staying is the right thing, who keeps trying to find the shared language with the people they love, even when the trying takes years. Hank Hill is not an exceptional man. He is a good one. And King of the Hill thinks that's more than sufficient. It thinks, quietly and consistently, that the people who do the ordinary things with real care are the people communities are built from. That the alley and the grill and the propane and the neighbors and the slow, patient love of a father for a son he doesn't quite understand, that these things are not small, that they are actually the substance of what it means to live well. The finale makes this argument one more time, simply and without ornamentation, and then the camera goes up and Arlen is there in the evening and the show is over. I don't think I have better words than that for what the ending does. I think it does something that very few series endings manage, which is to let the show be exactly what it always was, no more, no less, and to let that be enough, which it is, more than enough. Let's wind down. I want to talk about what Bobby winning the competition alone actually means in the context of everything the show has built. It would have been easy, and in many shows it would have been the obvious choice, to have Hank save the day somehow. To have Hank's knowledge and experience and presence on the series finale of King of the Hill, Hank does save the day for Bobby. In the series finale, Bobby competes as part of a team in the meat competition. King of the Hill does know in the finale, Bobby helps his team win the competition by competes alone. He identifies the flaw. He wins alone. Hank's contribution is a pep talk that helps Bobby believe in himself. But the actual work, the finding of the thing that everyone else missed, is entirely Bobby's. This matters because it means the moment of resolution between Hank and Bobby is not Hank finally understanding Bobby by doing something for Bobby. It's Hank watching Bobby do something for himself. Hank doesn't fix it, Bobby fixes it. And Hank gets to be proud without being responsible for the outcome. That's a subtler version of fatherhood than television usually offers. The version where your job is not to make things happen for your child, but to get out of the way and watch what your child can do. Bobby wins, and nobody expected him to, including the people nominally on his team. He goes back to his family and to Arlen and to the backyard, and they fire up the grill. The cookout in the final scene is doing several things simultaneously that are worth naming. It's showing you that the finale isn't about a single relationship resolved. It's about a community that has been accumulating across 13 years, coming together in the most ordinary possible setting. The neighbors come not because they were invited to an event. They come because something smells good and they know the people who live here, and this is what Rainy Street does. This casual, unremarkable gathering is the show's final image of what a good life produces. Not a triumph, a cookout, neighbors and the smell of the grill and everyone just there. Con telling Connie to take the night off from studying is one line, one decision. But it lands because you know Con. You know how much Connie's success means to him, how much the studying represents. And here, at the end of the show, he makes the choice to let her be present instead. To be here with the food and the neighbors instead of ahead of where she currently is. That's growth for Con, rendered in one line, without anyone naming it as growth. Dale and Nancy are there. They're fine. The affair's over. The marriage is intact. Dale doesn't know what you know. He is happy, and he is happy in the most Dale way possible. Probably developing a theory about something, probably with the sunglasses on, probably slightly paranoid about a specific aspect of the gathering, but there, Bill is there, still Bill, still going. Boomhauer's wallet is the show's final mystery completed, and what I love about how it's completed is the method. Not in a scene, not in a conversation, just a wallet falling open and a badge. 13 seasons of wondering, and the answer is given in a visual aside during the final minutes of the series. The show trusts you to see it and understand it and feel the weight of it without being told how to feel about it. That's confidence. That's a show that knows what it's been doing and knows you've been watching. The question that Boomhauer's badge raises, which the show absolutely does not address, is whether he's been running surveillance on Dale for 13 years. Whether the conspiracy theorist's nearest friend has been the government agent all along. The show lets this be funny in the background and doesn't make a whole thing of it, because making a whole thing of it would undercut the warmth, because the mystery, slightly preserved, is better than the answer fully given. Then the camera goes up. I've watched a lot of series finales. I have opinions about which ones work and which don't, and the ones that work, for me, are usually the ones that trust the accumulated weight of the series to do the emotional work rather than trying to do it in the finale itself. The finales that fail tend to try too hard. The big speech, the grand gesture, the moment designed to make you cry. The finales that work tend to be quieter than you expect, because by that point, the show has given you enough that a quiet gesture is sufficient. To Sirloin with Love is as quiet as it gets. A talent competition, a cookout, a wallet, a camera going up. Everything else is carried by 13 years of showing you who these people are. That's everything King of the Hill ever wanted to be. Specific, honest, unhurried, and quietly certain that ordinary things done with care are worth your attention. It turns out they are. They absolutely are. So that's King of the Hill. 13 seasons, 259 episodes, a propane salesman, his wife, his son, his friends, his complicated father, his neighbors, his niece, the family next door, the alley, and a fictional suburb of Dallas that feels more real than most real places television has taken me. I've been talking about this show for a while now, and I want to end on something simple, which is just, the show is kind. That's the thing that sits with me most after everything. It is kind to the people in it. It doesn't look down at them. It doesn't use them as vehicles for satire or condescension. It takes Hank's propane and Peggy's Spanish column and Bill's loneliness and Dale's conspiracies and Bobby's comedy and Khan's ambitions and Luann's resilience and treats all of it as worth taking seriously. It treats these people as complete. That's rarer than it sounds. Television, especially animated television of that era, often deals in types: the lovable buffoon, the sharp wife, the weird neighbor. King of the Hill has people who could be read as those types and consistently refuses to let them be only that. Hank is not the rigid patriarch. He's a specific man with a specific history and a genuine love for specific things. Dale is not the conspiracy crank. He's a person with real loyalties who has built his defenses in a particular shape for reasons the show glimpses but doesn't reduce. Bill is not the sad sack. He is someone in real pain who keeps going because his friends keep standing in an alley with him on Tuesday evenings, and that is ultimately enough to keep going. The show argues, I think, that this is how most lives actually work. Not through the exceptional event, the transformation, the revelation that changes everything, but through accumulation, through showing up, through caring about the specific small things that are yours to care about, through the alley and the grill and the neighbors who come over when something smells good. Bobby Hill is going to be fine. This is the thing I come away from every rewatch knowing. He is kind and funny and fully himself, and he loves his father, and his father loves him. And one day they found meat between them and stood at a grill together. And that was the ending. That was enough. More than enough. If you made it here, wherever in the video here finds you, thank you for keeping me company tonight. Future videos will cover more of this territory, probably. Other shows, other characters, other arguments being made quietly in the background of things that look like just entertainment. Arlen will always be there when you need it, a bit flat, quite hot, 4 men standing in an alley not quite saying what they mean, but meaning it anyway. Sleep well. King of the Hill has been off the air since 2010 in its original form. And in that time, the world has changed in ways that make it feel both further away and somehow more relevant than it did when it was running. The things the show cared about, ordinary community, the dignity of unglamorous work, the slow, patient effort of maintaining relationships over decades, these things have a different texture in a cultural moment that moves very fast and values very different things. The show is a record of a specific attention span and a specific pace. Watching it now feels the revival, which came back in 2025, suggests that the show still has things to say, that the characters are still alive in ways that mean something to the people making it. Live in ways that mean something to the people making it. I won't go deep on the revival tonight, but it's there. If you want more Arlen after this, it picks up where it left off, mostly, which is exactly right. What King of the Hill leaves you with after everything is the feeling that you've spent time with real people, not fictional constructs, people. Hank and Peggy and Bobby and Dale and Bill and Boomhauer and Cotton and Con and Min and Connie and Luann and Lucky and Gracie. The show gave them enough specificity over enough time that they became real in the way that certain characters become real, not as themselves, but as something that refers to something true about how people actually are. That's what the best long-form television does, and King of the Hill is one of the best examples of it. Arlen is waiting whenever you want to go back. The grill is probably